Family of travelers. Marco Polo was an Italian explorer who traveled to Asia, where he served in the court of China's great Mongol, Emperor Kublai Khan. By writing a book of his discoveries and adventures, Marco offered Europe its first look at Eastern cultures and traditions. Explorer of Asia. When Marco Polo was 17 years old, he traveled with his father, Niccolo, and uncle, Maffeo, to Asia to meet with Kublai Khan. Marco worked in Kublai Khan's service for 17 years, traveling on missions as his official ambassador or representative. Marco's explorations of many parts of Asia, such as China, India, and the Persian Gulf regions, and his tales of the gold, silks, and spices that he found there prompted other explorers to embark on journeys to the Far East. Polo's early life. Some historians believe Marco Polo was born into a wealthy family of merchants in the city-state of Venice, Italy. Before Marco was born, his father Niccolo traveled to Asia to trade grain, iron, wood, salted meat, and woven goods. Marco's mother died in 1269 before Niccolo returned home to Venice. As a boy, Marco did not receive a formal education, but he did learn to read and write Italian. Some historians believe that he gained a great deal of knowledge from the sailors he met at the wharves or docks who shared with him stories of distant and wondrous places. Above, Marco Polo was named for Saint Mark, the patron saint or protector of Venice. Marco Polo's journals. When Marco returned to Venice, he wrote a book of his adventures in 1298 with the help of a writer named Rustichello of Pisa. His book, Description of the World, was widely read by people of Europe, but many did not believe Marco's accounts because they sounded very strange and unreal. They have wild elephants and plenty of unicorns, which are scarcely smaller than elephants. They have the hair of a buffalo and feet like an elephant's. They have a single large black horn in the middle of the forehead. They do not attack with their horn, but only with their tongue and their knees. For their tongues are furnished with long, sharp spines, so that when they want to do any harm to anyone, they first crush him by kneeling upon him, and then lacerate him with their tongues. They have a head like a wild boar's, and always carries it stooped towards the ground. 1254, Marco Polo is born in Venice, Italy. 1271, Marco Polo departs Italy for the Orient with Niccolo and Maffeo Polo. January 9, 1324, Marco Polo dies. Medieval Europe. The Polos traveled to Asia during the medieval period, or the Middle Ages, a period of time that stretched from 500 AD to 1500 AD. During this time, exploration was difficult and Europeans knew very little of other countries in the world. Venice Seaport. During the 1200s, Venice was an important seaport that lay between Asia and Europe on the Mediterranean Sea. The seaport offered traders and merchants the easiest route by water to countries in Southwest Asia and Northeast Africa. Venice's trade flourished, and slaves from Russia, Africa, and Turkey were brought there and sold, making Venice wealthy. Above, during the Middle Ages, many Europeans knew so little of Asia that they believed stories that the people there had heads like dogs. Trade wars. In 1253, the city-states of Genoa and Venice became involved in a series of wars for control of the Mediterranean Sea and the trade routes to Asia. The wars made travel by sea for exploration or trade unsafe. A peace treaty signed in 1381 finally ended the wars, and Venice was declared the winner. Above, early medieval maps were circular, and Asia was shown to be the largest continent, filling the upper half. The arms of the T represent the Don and Nile rivers, and the middle portion was the Mediterranean Sea. Europe lay on the left side, and Africa was on the right. Mongol relations. In the 1200s, Europe's greatest enemies were the Mongols, a people from Mongolia, an area north of China. Mongol leaders wanted to conquer all of Europe. Groups of Mongols under many leaders attacked and ransacked European cities and villages. In 1206, a Mongol ruler named Genghis Khan united all the Mongol tribes and conquered northern China. By the time Genghis's grandson Kublai became Khan, or ruler, in 1260, the Mongol Empire covered most of Eastern Europe. Kublai Khan wanted peaceful relations with Europe in order to encourage trade and to learn about European culture and technology. The years between 1200 and 1300 are known as Pax Mongolica, which means the peace of the Mongols. Under Mongol law, no traveler could be harmed while in Mongol lands under penalty of death. Venetian merchants traveled along the Silk Road, a series of trade routes that connected Asian and European trading centers. They traded with the Mongols for medicines, spices, perfumes, cottons, silks, and pearls. Below left, Europeans referred to the Mongols as the Tartars because they said that they came from Tartarus or hell. In the Orient. Marco's father, Niccolo, and his uncle Maffeo traveled to the Orient to trade their goods. There they met the great Mongol Emperor Kublai Khan. Trading in the Orient. In 1253, Niccolo and Maffeo Polo set sail from Venice, Italy, with a convoy of ships to trade iron, salted meat, and grain in Constantinople, in present-day Turkey. They traveled southeast through the Adriatic Sea, past the Greek islands, and into the Sea of Marmora. After trading for 6 years in Constantinople, the Polo sailed to the town of Sudak in present-day Ukraine. They then traveled to the towns of Surai and Bulgara in present-day Russia. They traded for Chinese silk and Bukhara in Uzbekistan and were forced to stay there for 3 years because a civil war blocked their route home to Venice. Below, to ensure the Polo safe travel through Mongol lands, Kublai Khan gave them a golden tablet called a paisa, which means tablets of command. The tablet bore the great Khan's seal and contained the following words: "By the strength of the eternal heaven, holy be the Khan's name. Let anyone who does not pay him reverence be killed." A promise to the great Khan. While in Bukhara, the Polos were visited by Kublai Khan's ambassador with a message that he wished to meet them. They crossed the desert of Zungaria and reached Kublai's palace in Khanbalik, or present-day Beijing, China. Kublai Khan asked the Polos to describe the Europe's countries, rulers, and Christianity, which was the main religion of Europe during the Middle Ages. Before allowing them to leave, he made them promise to return with 100 experts on Christianity and a message from the Pope or the leader of the Roman Catholic Church. He also asked for some holy oil from the lamp at Jesus' tomb in Jerusalem, which Europeans believed cured diseases of the body and soul. 1253, Niccolo and Maffeo Polo depart from Venice, Italy. 1266, Niccolo and Maffeo meet Kublai Khan. 1269, the Polo brothers return to Venice, Italy. A long wait. The Polos spent 3 years traveling on foot and horseback across Asia. When they reached Armenia, they sailed to Acre, which is in present-day Syria, where they learned that Pope Clement IV had died. Forced to wait for a new pope to be elected, the Polos worried about their lengthy absence from Kublai Khan. In 1271, newly elected Pope Gregory X granted them permission to retrieve some holy oil and gave them gifts of crystal vases and jewelry for the Khan. The Pope presented them with 2 friars, as he was reluctant to send 100 people on such a dangerous journey. Niccolo allowed 17-year-old Marco to accompany them on the trip back to Cathay, or present-day China. Below, Niccolo and Maffeo Polo traveled on the Orient to trade for exotic goods, such as pearls. Along the Silk Road. During their 3-year journey to Asia, the Polos traveled along a network of trade routes known as the Silk Road. The Silk Road was used by traders who brought silk, gold, and ivory from China to Europe in return for trade goods. The journey begins. The Polos departed from Acre in 1271 with the 2 friars and traveled through Turkey. Frightened of the Saracens, or Muslims, who roamed the area in search of goods to raid, the friars left the Polos and returned to Acre. The Polos continued their journey through present-day Armenia, Anatolia, Georgia, and Baghdad. They joined a caravan of traveling merchants. The party journeyed through the deserts of Upper Persia in present-day Iran, which was home to bandits. The caravan encountered a fierce sandstorm, which Marco believed the bandits summoned by using ancient magic. When the bandits attacked them, the Polos escaped to a nearby village, but members of their caravan were killed or sold into slavery. Marco Polo's journey to Asia: Venice, Acre, Kerman, Hormuz, Kaskar, Chengdu, Khanbalik. Marco Polo's journey home to Venice: Hormuz, Kerman, Constantinople, Venice. Above, caravansaries were inns that surrounded large courtyards along the Silk Road. There, traveling merchants slept, washed, ate, and received food and water for their horses and camels. Hormuz. The Polos traveled along the plateau of Iran into the city of Hormuz on an island in the present-day Persian Gulf. The winds in Hormuz were so hot that people submerged themselves in water until they passed. The people of Hormuz offered the Polos ships for the rest of their journey. The ships were made of wooden boards held together with coconut yarn wound around pegs. Marco believed the ships were not seaworthy and decided to continue on land. The Polos crossed a salt desert in eastern Iran called the Dasht Ilut and reached the province of Khorasan. Background. Along the Silk Road, Afghan, Indian, and Turkish bandits often robbed travelers of their jewels, spices, silks, and incense, or forced them to pay a toll in order to pass through their lands. For protection, merchants journeyed together in large caravans. Rubies and sapphires. The Polos entered the cold region of Badakhshan in present-day Afghanistan, where people mined rubies, lapis lazuli, and sapphires. Marco fell ill and traveled to the Pamir Mountains in south-central Asia, where the pure air cured him. The Polos then crossed the Pamirs, which took them 52 days. Marco observed that the shortage of oxygen high up in the mountains caused fires to burn less brightly, food not to cook as well, and kept birds from flying there. They saw a few hunters and animal pens made of the large horns of wild sheep. The trading cities of Turkestan. After descending the Pamir Mountains, the Polos entered the plain of Chinese Turkestan and the present-day province of Xinjiang in China. They stopped at many trading cities, such as Kashgar, where they traded for cotton cloth. In the city of Yarkand, Marco saw people suffering from goiter, which he thought was caused by drinking dirty water. While in Khotan, in present-day Xinjiang, Uyghur in China, Marco noted the city's many farms, vineyards, and gardens of wheat, rice, and apricots. He also saw men digging for the gemstone jade in dried riverbeds. Right. On long journeys, merchants rode the two-humped Bactrian camel, which was strong enough to carry up to 500 pounds, or 227 kilograms, of merchandise. These camels have bushy eyebrows, 2 rows of long eyelashes, hair-lined ears, and nostrils that opened and closed, which protected them from blowing sand. The last stretch. The Polos' last stretch of travel took them across the hot Gobi Desert, which the Chinese called the Flowing Sands. There were water wells along the way, but no food available, so they had to pack many provisions or supplies. They emerged from the desert after about a month and arrived in Sechao, or present-day Donghuang, in China. Sechao was known as the City of Sands. While the Polos traveled in Kanchao, they were met by Kublai Khan's messengers, who escorted them to the Khan's summer palace in Shangdu. There, Kublai Khan greeted the Polos with a great feast. Bazaars. Many trading posts or bazaars were located in cities along the Silk Road, where caravans traded for fresh animals, supplies, and goods. Merchants sold many Chinese goods from covered stalls and tents. The goods included cinnamon bark, rhubarb, furs, tea, ceramics, bronze weapons, belt buckles, and mirrors. Background. The Polos heard stories that mirages of distant oases and traveling caravans appeared in the Gobi Desert. These mirages lured wary travelers from their routes and caused them to become lost. At night, travelers reported the eerie sounds of drums and howling. At Kublai's court. The Polos spent the next 17 years at Kublai Khan's court. Kublai Khan made Marco his attendant of honor and sent him on missions through Asia to the countries of China, India, and Burma, or present-day Myanmar. Kublai's test. While at Chengdu, Kublai Khan sent Marco to the city of Karazhan in eastern Persia to deliver messages from the Khan's court and to report on all he saw in the city. Kublai Khan believed Marco to be more trustworthy than his other subjects, who were peoples the Mongols conquered and forced to be servants. When Marco returned, Kublai Khan was impressed with his report because it was more detailed than those of past messengers. Kublai Khan named Marco regional ambassador, which meant that he was to represent Kublai Khan in all lands and to provide him with reports during all of his travels. Above and left. While in China, Marco saw for the first time people using silkworms to make silk. The Chinese fed mulberry leaves to the silkworms. When the silkworms spun cocoons, the Chinese boiled the cocoons to loosen the fibers. Then they spun the fibers on a spool and wove them into silk. City of 12,000 Bridges. Of all the cities Marco visited, his favorite was Kinsai, which was present-day Guangzhou in eastern China. He referred to the city as paradise and marveled at its 3,000 public baths and 12,000 bridges. The bridges allowed Arab and Persian trading ships to enter and leave the city. There were 12 tradesmen's guilds or groups in Kinsai dedicated to practicing crafts such as tool making and woodworking. Each guild had 12,000 buildings made up of 30 to 40 workers in each. Marco reported that the people of Kinsai were naturally peaceful and kept no weapons. They used small boats for leisurely sailing in the lake and built pavilions for celebrations on the 2 islands beside the city. 1273. The Mongols conquer Fu. 1275. The Polos reach Asia. 1292. The Polos escort Princess Kokochin to Persia. 1294. Kublai Khan dies. 1295. The Polos return to Venice, Italy. Danger in Tibet. Marco reported that many people had fled from Tibet because the country was overrun with wild tigers and other dangerous animals. Merchants and travelers protected themselves from the animals by tying large bamboo canes together and placing them around their camps. Then they lit fires around the cane bundles, causing them to explode. The loud sound frightened the animals away. Tomb of Gold. Marco reported that the people of Burma covered their teeth with gold, and men tattooed striped patterns around their arms and legs. They used elephants for riding into battle against the Mongols. In the city of Mian, Marco saw the tomb of a king made of gold and silver pagodas. He wrote that he saw magicians and oxen as tall as elephants in the province of Bengala, present-day Bangladesh, and met a king with 400 wives in the country of Kingagu, present-day Myanmar. Nicolo and Maffeo services. Marco's reports claimed that Nicolo and Maffeo were military advisors for the Mongols. They helped the Khan conquer the town of Shenyangfu in China by teaching the Mongols how to build mangonels for the battle. Historians today question Marco's report because historical records show that Shenyangfu fell to Kublai Khan 2 years before the Polos arrived in Asia. Many believe that Nicolo and Maffeo remained at Kublai's court trading to build their fortunes and that they did not teach the Mongols how to do battle. Background. In his reports, Marco Polo claimed to have been governor of the city of Yangzhou in China from 1282 to 1285. There are no historical reports that show any record of this. Some historians believe that Marco only visited the city as an ambassador bringing messages from the Mongol emperor. Others believe that he served there for 3 years as a tax inspector for the Privy Council, or council that advised the Khan. Homesick. In 1291, the Polos decided to return home to Venice. Kublai Khan was now 76 years old, and the Polos were worried about their safety if the Khan were to die because many Mongols were jealous of the Khan's treatment of the Polos. The Khan would not allow the Polos to leave because he had grown fond of them. Soon after, 3 messengers from Persia visited Kublai Khan with news that the wife of Arghun, the Khan of Persia, had died. Her dying wish was for Kublai to choose a Mongolian bride for Arghun, and he chose a princess named Kokochin. The messengers asked Kublai Khan to allow Marco to escort them overseas to Persia, and Kublai Khan consented. He also allowed the Polos to visit their families in Venice, but made them promise to return. Homeward bound. The Polos sailed from China with a fleet of 14 ships supplied by Kublai Khan. They sailed for more than 2 years until they reached Hormuz on the Persian Gulf. After escorting the princess, they rested from their journey in Tabriz, Iran, where they received news that Kublai Khan had died. The Polos finally reached Venice in 1295. Below. While in Khorasan in eastern Persia, Marco encountered strange and terrible animals, which he compared to huge serpents. These were actually crocodiles, and Marco learned that hunters used their gall to treat people who had been bitten by rabid animals.